There have been a multitude of Dragon Ball video game series out there, and the 4 biggest ones in the modern era have been Dragon Ball Raging Blast, Dragon Ball Tenkaichi, Dragon Ball Xenoverse, and Dragon Ball Budokai. But out of these 4 Dragon Ball video game series, which is the best one? Well, we asked you guys on Twitter and we got a lot of results, so without wasting any more time, let's get straight into this video. So, starting off with the worst game, Rhymestyle, what do you think about Raging Blast losing?
So apparently, Tenkaichi 3 was too complicated to play. I remember when all the reviews came out, like, that game got good reviews. I'm talking about like 9s, 10s, 8s. Tenkaichi 3 got amazing reviews. But apparently, the biggest problem that everybody like ate up, Banda for was due to the fact that, quote-unquote, it was too hard to play. And because of that, they started aiming more for a casual audience, and they dumbed their games down because every game that came out after that took like 10 steps back. I mean, we took many steps back to the point where we get to Ultimate Tenkaichi. That's how bad it got. Now, Raging Blast was a fun game, but there was a lot of problems with it. At times, it felt very, very stiff to me. I didn't like how it just felt very limited. I mean, it was, pretty good compared to other games, but it looked really, really nice. Like, the thing about Raging Blast series is it looked really nice. On top of that, I believe it played at 60 frames per second, which was like crazy for a PS2, Xbox 360, no, PS3, Xbox 360 game at the time. But again, the problem with Raging Blast series is it was so dumbed down from Tenkaichi that I personally could never really get into it just because it felt so lacking compared to the previous installments of the games. But again, Raging Blast has a special place in people's hearts for whatever reason, in which case, if you're a Raging Blast fan, I want to basically ask you, what is it about that game that you like the most? But for me personally, I agree with it being at the bottom of this list just because Tenkaichi, introduced a 3D style fighter. Budokai gave us, our first good Dragon Ball game. And then the Xenoverse series gave us ourselves. Like, we got to play as ourselves in the games. Now, obviously, each of these games had their own problems, which we'll probably discuss. I don't know if we'll get into or not. But I agree with how, this list is set up to the point where every game had something special. And the Raging Blast was just kind of there.
Raging Blast 1 and 2, they came out in like 2009, 2010. The thing about them that I feel like is the big thing with people is that was I feel like that was the game for a lot of people's generation. People that are now 17, maybe even 18 years old, they grew up with those ones specifically, and maybe Burst Slimmer or something. But I feel like that's where that really comes from. They never really maybe experienced Tenkaichi, or if they went back to it, but, it looked worse, or, ran slower, so they didn't really feel like it felt as good. And Raging Blast, again, runs very smooth, looks pretty nice, but it is a more dialed back experience than what we got in Tenkaichi. And, I myself, Tenkaichi is not my favorite series, but I feel like Raging Blast is good where it is. I actually expected it to maybe be higher just because of how many people I see comment about it, but maybe it's just those people are so much louder than the rest of the community that it just kind of sticks out.
Like, to those who like Raging Blast as their favorite game, was that your first one? That's what I want to know. Was Raging Blast your favorite game because it was the first one you played? Let me know in the comment section below.
Alright, so let's move on up the ladder a little bit here. So let's talk about why Budokai fell to the second losing spot on this poll. What do you think is the reason for that, Rhymestyle?
Now, Dragon Rush is what personally kept me from liking Budokai 3 as much as the most, average person, because the way it works, in case you guys don't know, Dragon Rush is like their system to doing ultimate attacks. You'll do like a combo, it knocks the opponent into an attack, and then it goes into a quick time event, setup where it's like you have to press square, circle, triangle, X 3 times. And every time you press it, if your opponent doesn't guess what you pressed, then it keeps the combo going. But like when you do succeed 3 times, then it does the ultimate attack. Like this is basically set up so you don't spam spirit bombs and kamehamehas or super kamehamehas in the beginning of the match. Because like that's kind of like what I didn't like about the Raging Blast series is you can literally just jump in and do a spirit bomb for like the first 2 seconds. Whereas games like Tenkaichi 3 and Budokai 3 limited it in their own way. And what Budokai did is they had Dragon Rush, which was so annoying, and like seeing Dragon Rush activated literally like 20 times in like one fight every single time is what kind of kept me from enjoying Budokai 3 as much as the average person. However, Infinite World was my Budokai 3 because like Infinite World, I believe, only sold like 150,000 copies compared to the 3 million of Budokai, which is crazy how little people played it. Infinite World takes that away, and Infinite World is all about pure skill and fighting, and that's what makes me like that game more. However, due to the fact that I played Infinite World so late in the series, Tenkaichi still has my love over those 2 games from back in the day.
Budokai is just a good fight. It's just a good game in general. It's what it is. I see people that don't even like Dragon Ball or don't watch the series. they've played that game just knowing that it's a good game. It's just an incredibly well-crafted fighter. And sure, it's, you know, it's simple. It's got some problems, obviously. And what Dragon Ball game doesn't have problems? But the beauty of Budokai is just how finely tuned it is. I mean, Dimps, they've worked on fighting games. So, actual real fighting games. And they know what they're doing when they make these things. So, there's a reason people like them so much. It's not just because it's one of those games that people grew up with. It just because it was a good experience.
Except for Dragon Rush. Dragon Rush is trash. I'll stand by that any day.
I think if they had more than like 2 animations for it, it would have been more interesting. But I agree, it is a stupid mechanic. But I like it like that. And what's interesting about Budokai is that it is different from a lot of other fighting games, but at the same time, very, very familiar and easy to pick up. But
the interesting thing though about Budokai though is I loved originally when I was a kid doing all of those combos like punch, 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 Kamehameha. But then as you get older, I kind of liked how they evolved and you could just shoot a Kamehameha instead of having to always press those same combos over and over and over again. So that was one thing they improved and that was great progression. But
well, I do want to add something about Budokai real quick. Let's just all remember when Mortal Kombat 9 came out, everyone was going on about how awesome the story mode and the cutscenes are. Let's all remember Budokai 1 here. How many fighting games before Budokai 1 had a story mode with, like, expansive cutscenes in it? I mean, that was pretty impressive for its time, and those are still incredibly well animated to this day.
Yeah, they were pretty well. Also, let's not forget the fact that Budokai 1 was probably amongst the only times where they actually showed blood. You guys remember the scene where Piccolo shoots Goku and Raditz? In Budokai 1, yeah, it showed actually the blood, which they then edited out later for the HD collection. Like the original print of Budokai 1 showed like a red mark when he got shot in the stomach. But they, you know, I think they made it just straight up black in the HD collection because censorship.
Yeah. But ultimately, let's move on to the second winner of this list in Tenkaichi. Now, let me start off by saying that I think out of all the Dragon Ball games that I've played, Tenkaichi 3 would definitely be at the top. And when I look at the Tenkaichi games, I liked 2 a lot for its story. But in terms of the characters, I really did enjoy Tenkaichi 3. However, Rhymestyle and I were talking off the air yesterday. And one thing I will say is that although the game had, wink wink, a lot of characters, a lot of those characters you probably didn't use. So we kind of came to this theory that having an overabundance of characters actually isn't always best for the game, because a lot of times you're just making the developers program characters and you're not going to use them anyway. So that's one thing I might say about the Tenkaichi games, is they definitely had the most expansive roster. But I definitely had the most fun as a kid playing those games. What do you think about Tenkaichi, Bean?
It's really tough because I do love the Tenkaichi series, but it always has been one of those situations where I've always liked Budokai more. And, you know, I did get Budokai 2 in, like, what, 2002 or 2003. I got on GameCube, so it was like 2003 then. I grew up with that one, but I feel like even though it might be nostalgia for that series, I feel like the Budokai games are a more well-designed series than Tenkaichi. I feel like it's a more fair experience for both players. And with Tenkaichi, the one thing that I've always not quite liked is the amount of characters. Not because there's a lot of characters, I love that, but that they do kind of all play pretty much about the same. And I don't want people to look at that and say that, well, a lot of fighting games have characters that basically play the same on a basic level. That's true, but fighting games, they have intricacies to the characters, like especially with like Burst Limit. They didn't have a lot of characters in that game, but boy, they felt so different from each other. And even with Xenoverse, they got a lot of variation. But with Tenkaichi, everyone basically feels essentially the same, you know, aside from like when you get the different tiers of body types, I guess. But what people really do enjoy and what makes that so popular, again, is how different it is and how many characters and how much fan service into that game. Like all the different dialogue lines for people when they go to fight each other. There's so many different lines of dialogue, and it's absolutely crazy. And I commend the developers for including all of that content, and I can understand the popularity, and I do myself enjoy the game very much. But just for me, it's not my favorite, but I understand, and I completely expected it to be ranked where it is, and I actually expect it to maybe edge out Xenoverse a bit.
Like one of the things I want to also address is what you just talked about, Josh, is people always say things like, oh, Tenkaichi. Tenkaichi always has, you know, a billion characters. It's like, no, it didn't. Tenkaichi had 40 characters. Of those 40 characters, they've reused those exact same models and attack animations on 127 characters. Yes, there was 120 plus characters, but everybody used like the same 5 grabs. Well, not 5, not literally 5, but like the same like 15, 20 grabs. The same melee combinations. Like, the game was just a reskin left and right, which again isn't a bad thing, because like it still gave us experience of, or like it gave us like the atmosphere of playing as these characters and recreating our favorite fights. But at the same time, they weren't really unique characters. And this is why I like Xenoverse so much more, is due to the fact that, yeah, we don't have 1,000 characters. We have like something like around 90, I want to say, in Xenoverse. But everybody is built uniquely around themselves. I mean, unless you have the Goku variations, in which case, literally, that's basically the same thing that happened with Tenkaichi 3, where it's just reskins. Now, the thing I love the most about Tenkaichi games is how fast they were. Like, Budokai is more about focus on fighting and doing combos and juggles and, you know, like the melee. But the Tenkaichi games were just fast. You're going so fast. By the time it's literally like watching a Dragon Ball fight. Like, just, you know how like when you watch people in the Dragon Ball series like fight, you just see the people in the background just watching with their eyes going left, right, like ping pong style. That's what Tenkaichi was. Like, it's just so fast and intense, and that's what made me like the Tenkaichi game so much.
The final thing I should say about Tenkaichi is that if you played it for the Wii, the online experience was virtually non-existent because it was garbage, and like the frames were going at like 7 frames per second. And also, there was a combo with Super Saiyan 2 Teen Gohan and Tenkaichi 3 where if you punch your opponent away and you fire a father-son Kamehameha, and I'm telling you guys who are listening to this right now, if you're listening to this and you still have the game, go and try it. If you punch them away and you fire a father-son Kamehameha with the perfect timing, what it does is it resets the animation once the father-son Kamehameha goes at them, which makes it 100% impossible to guard. Like, I got that move off on everybody every time because it was just busted, and it just made the game harder.
Every time I used to piss Danny off, what he would do is he'll pick second form Cell, and Cell has a loop. Because what happens is when you do life champ, it heals Cell and gives you ki back. So the second he knocks your opponent back after doing it, he can do it again, and he can do it literally non-stop over and over and over and over again. And like, the game was very busted when it comes down to balance, but again, this game is more designed to play like on the couch with your friends. And of course, if your friend's gonna be cheap, you just punch him in the chest or something. Nah, I'm kidding. But like, that game was not designed to work online at all. That's why it's like, if we ever do get a Tenkaichi remake, online will be terrible unless they figure out how to balance out all those moves. But there was a lot of busted stuff. Goku had about 2 with the Spirit Bomb. Oh my gosh, bad memories right now. Still love the game though. But with that said, Yajirobe, speaking of which, Yajirobe had that ultimate attack where he'll get a senzu bean and heal everything. And like, if you know how to play the game, you can literally beat someone with Yajirobe. Like, the second you're about to die, you just pop that senzu beam and bam, you're back to full health. Your opponent has like 1 bar. Like, there's no way they can come back. Like, I mean, it's really good.
Yeah, and the characters that couldn't fly and stuff like that. But ultimately, though, start off why Dragon Ball Xenoverse won.
Number 1, you got to be you. Every character is unique. They got a pretty good roster. They give you a brand new experience as well, where it's not the same story, which, you know, if it was the same story, we wouldn't mind playing it. But like, being able to play a different perspective and seeing like the actual what ifs come to perspective, like not perspective, but come true. Because like, what ifs have always been a big thing about Dragon Ball. What if this happens? What if that happens? In Xenoverse, you get to live the what ifs. You literally get to live the what ifs. You know the story. Here's another perspective on it. And like, that's why Xenoverse is at the top of this list. That's exactly why. And hopefully, like I said, if Xenoverse 3 does happen in the future, which it most likely will, because Xenoverse 1 and 2 did sell pretty well, I hope that they take what they built as far as blueprints in Xenoverse 1 and 2 and make it 1,000 times better, because like, they should not rush this. Don't rush it. Dimps, Bandai, do not rush Xenoverse 3. Take your time. Take 3 years if you need to. Come back and give us a perfected Xenoverse series, and I guarantee you, it'll be the greatest Dragon Ball game of all time, in the future and in the past.
I mean, the first one, it was so unique and different, but at the same time, that one had, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try to defend it. It had a lot of problems, but goddamn if that was not my favorite game when it came out. It was so unique and fresh to have, number 1, that combat style, that real-time fighting style that Xenoverse brings to the table, and how they've now really expanded upon it in the second game. And God, it surprises me how many people I see that say that Xenoverse 2 is a copy and paste of the first one. It's just like, you never played the second one, or you didn't play the first one very much. They're so different. You can mix and match like different button combos, and it makes like a unique string of punches and kicks, and all the other balance tweaks they've done, and not to mention the new story, the new open world aspect where you get the giant hub city now. And what I really love about Xenoverse that I feel like Tenkaichi was missing is it takes a bit from Budokai, where there's so many ways to evade from your opponent, and that gives strategy to each fight and a dynamic. Like, the thing about Tenkaichi is a lot of the fights could feel the same after a while, in my opinion, if you knew how to play the game. Xenoverse, especially if you take it online, the fights can feel different every single time, just based on people's playstyles. And of course, and we have the advantage now of having these more modern games that have the advantage of being able to be updated and fixed post-launch. But it doesn't matter what I say, it's my opinion, and people are going to say that I'm wrong, or, you know, Xenoverse is trash, and it's, you know, it's up to them. But I can actually go in and provide my analysis of the game and tell you what I think, but, you know, I'm just bringing what I got to the table here.
Ultimately, I will say this. I had the most fun in my life playing Tenkaichi, but I think Xenoverse is by far the best game in terms of how it plays. And although there was some mechanics that needed to be polished up, like the busted Super Saiyan system where you could just spam Ki Blast over and over again. And on top of that, if you think about the fact that Xenoverse had a significantly better custom character system than Ultimate Tenkaichi, I'm sure Dino would probably agree with that. I think that definitely made it better as a whole. But let us know what you think in the comment section below. As we already said, guys, this is just a fun conversation. There's no right or wrong. These are just our opinions on the issue, and let us know what you think and why. So with everything else said, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys, and please check out Bean and Dino in my description.